There's a number that used to mean something, a number that, for decades, was the finish line, the proof that you made it, that you were stable, secure, and financially comfortable. That number was $100,000 a year, and somewhere along the way, it stopped meaning any of that. Because today, there are people earning $100,000 a year who are one car repair away from financial panic. People who are college educated, fully employed, doing everything right, and still feel like they're losing. Not losing badly, not dramatically, just slowly, quietly, like a leak you can't find but can hear. And the question nobody seems to want to answer is, why? Welcome to the middle class illusion. Let's start with what the middle class was actually supposed to be, because it wasn't always a punchline. After World War II, the American middle class was the envy of the world. A single-income household could buy a home, raise kids, take a vacation, and retire with dignity. The math worked. The system worked. And for about 30 years, it genuinely did. But here's where the story gets uncomfortable. Because somewhere between then and now, the definition of middle class didn't just shift. It got quietly hollowed out. And most people didn't notice, because the labels stayed the same, while the reality underneath completely changed. The median household income in the United States today sits at around $75,000 a year. That sounds reasonable until you actually run the numbers. Because after federal taxes, state taxes, and Social Security contributions, that $75,000 becomes closer to $55,000 in take-home pay. That's roughly $4,600 a month. And then real life starts. Rent or mortgage payments, car payments, insurance, groceries, utilities, childcare, which alone can run $1,500 to $2,500 a month, depending on where you live, student loan payments, and then whatever's left over gets called a budget. Which brings us to the first uncomfortable truth. The middle class isn't shrinking because people are spending irresponsibly. It's shrinking because the costs of the things that define a middle class life have completely outpaced the income needed to afford them. Take housing, because nothing tells the story better than housing. In 1980, the median home price in the United States was around $47,000. The median household income was around $17,000. That's a price-to-income ratio of roughly 2.7 times. Uncomfortable, but manageable. Fast forward to today. The median home price is hovering around $420,000. The median household income is $75,000. That's a price-to-income ratio of 5.6 times, more than double what it was 40 years ago. And the interest rate environment made it worse. When rates were near zero, home prices exploded. Now that rates have climbed back up, monthly mortgage payments on a median-priced home can run $2,800 or more on a $75,000 salary after taxes. You do that math and you start to understand why 43% of millennials believe they will never own a home. That's not pessimism. That's arithmetic. But it's not just housing, because the middle class squeeze is happening across every single category that used to define financial stability. Health insurance premiums for a family of 4 now average over $23,000 a year. The majority of that might be employer covered, but the employee portion alone can still run $6,000 to $8,000 annually. And that's before a single doctor visit, before a deductible, before a prescription. College tuition has increased over 180% since 1980, adjusted for inflation. The average student loan borrower graduates with around $37,000 in debt, and the degree that was supposed to unlock the middle class is now the entrance fee just to compete for it. And then there's the thing nobody puts in the budget, but everybody feels. The cost of just existing has gone up. Groceries, car insurance, streaming subscriptions that somehow multiplied. The slow drip of everyday expenses that individually feel small, but collectively add up to a life that costs more than it used to. Significantly more. Here's where it gets psychologically interesting, because the middle class illusion isn't just economic, it's emotional. We live in an era of lifestyle visibility. Social media has made it impossible to not compare yourself to the curated highlight reel of everyone around you. And what that's done is create a generation of people who feel poor relative to a standard that was never real to begin with. But here's the twist. The pressure to appear middle class is actually making people poorer, because keeping up with the appearance of financial stability, the new car, the nice apartment, the vacations, the dinners out, is driving people deeper into debt while the savings rate craters. The personal savings rate in the United States has dropped from around 17% in the 1970s to under 5% today. Credit card debt just crossed $1.2 trillion for the first time in history. And buy now, pay later services, which are essentially payday loans with better branding, have exploded in popularity. People aren't spending recklessly because they're stupid. They're spending to maintain the feeling of being okay. And that feeling is getting more expensive by the year. So what actually happened? How did the middle class go from a destination to a treadmill? 3 things: wage stagnation, asset inflation, and the cost shift. Wages, adjusted for inflation, have barely moved for the bottom 60% of earners over the last 50 years. Productivity went up, corporate profits went up, CEO compensation went up, but the paycheck of the average worker largely flat in real terms. Meanwhile, the assets that build wealth, homes, stocks, investment accounts, inflated dramatically, which means the people who already had assets got richer, and the people trying to acquire their first asset got priced out. And then the cost shift. Decades ago, employers covered more of healthcare. Pensions guaranteed retirement income. The social safety net was stronger. Slowly and deliberately, those costs got shifted from institutions onto individuals, and individuals absorbed them quietly, through debt, through stress, and through the sinking feeling that they're somehow failing at a game that was rigged before they sat down. Now here's what I'm not saying. I'm not saying success is impossible. I'm not saying the system is so broken that effort doesn't matter, because it does. What I am saying is that the map is outdated. The advice your parents gave you about money was built for an economy that no longer exists. Go to school, get a job, work hard, buy a house. That path hasn't disappeared, but it's steeper, longer, and more expensive than it's ever been. And the first step to navigating it is to stop measuring yourself against a version of the middle class that hasn't existed for 30 years. Because chasing a standard that's been inflated beyond reach isn't ambition, it's a trap. The real financial move in 2025 isn't appearing stable, it's building actual stability, even if it looks different, even if it's slower, even if it doesn't photograph well. Because the middle class illusion is seductive, but it's still an illusion. So where do you actually stand? Drop it in the comments, because I have a feeling this one's going to hit differently for a lot of people.